How are you? Anastasia here. Second episode of Advice for Young Pros, my little corner of the internet. Welcome. If you found my channel, hopefully it's because it was randomly recommended to you. I don't know why I said that. Anyway, just to set the stage, the purpose of this channel is to be a space where I get the chance to you know, like share some stories, some wisdom, things that inspired me. I've been very blessed in my life and career, and I feel really compelled to pay those blessings forward. I've gotten the chance to work with some amazing people, and yeah, and this is a way for me to kind of share that out with others. Um, and yeah, and today, and I don't know, like I also just want a space where I hope over time, if people who come across this can find like a safe space for people to share, their stories and their thoughts and their learns, and we can all learn, support, and grow together. Because it's really important that you know people feel like they have a community. Sometimes, especially if you're working from home, which I do, I work from home. It can feel a little isolating. And so maybe this is a space, especially as a young professional, if you're starting out. And again, young doesn't mean like young in age. Young could mean young means young in your career. So if you just switch to a new role, if you're switching careers, if you just became a manager, like if you just got promoted, like that could be the young that I'm speaking to. And the space is for you. This is a space for us to have psychological safety and learning and sharing and growing. So that's why I'm hoping to create this space and why I'm here. And again, it's just, a way to share stories and yeah, to hang for a bit, for 15 minutes. That's my goal. No more than 15 because I can go on and on if I don't time box myself. Okay, so today's episode is inspired. What did I say? I don't know. Whatever. This video is inspired by a conversation that I had today with a friend who reached out because they were having a conflict with someone at work. So, have you ever had somebody that you disagreed with? Maybe not at work, maybe in life, but I'm sure you've disagreed with someone at work. It can be a pretty frustrating experience, right? Especially because you're supposed to get stuff done together. So, it can be a little bit tough to have to handle that. And in this case, my friend Tina was like, this person, this expletive here, is just like taking it so personally, and just because I have a different approach. So essentially, Tina recommended a different approach to something that they both have to kind of work together to figure out. And this person that she's disagreeing with, her name, let's call her Roxanne. Roxanne had like a different idea. And then Tina's like, well, we should be doing it this way. It really fits more with what we're supposed to do. And Roxanne feels like Tina is undermining her. And so Tina's like, but that's not what I'm doing. I'm here to help, just like her. Like, we have the same goal. Like, we're here to solve this together. And Roxanne's like, no one is, like, you're not really working with me. And Tina's like, but I am working with you. This is the best way to do this, right? And so she's coming to me and asking for advice. So, like, how do I get Roxanne off my back, essentially? And so I really thought about it, and I've been in a variety of conflicts at work before. I've literally, when I was like 25 and I was um abroad setting up our first international office, there was somebody, a client, who literally like um said some not nice things to me in an email because I had told this client that what they were wanting to do was not going to work because of the population that we served, And sure enough, when it did, but they didn't listen to me because, like, what do you know? You're 25. This client person was like a very, very accomplished, very intelligent man. And he was like, this is going to work. And it didn't. And when he had come back to say, what is this? Like, you didn't do what you were supposed to do. And I said, I did, but I had explained that this is why we need to do this other thing. And he just did not appreciate that. To be fair, I was 25. So, and I was like, I was in a foreign country for Pete's sake. Anyway, so, I obviously learned from that experience, and I know better today. If I could go back in time, I would have said, I hear you. I completely understand. How can we, I did accomplish what you'd asked, but it looks like it didn't work. How can we work together to problem solve so this doesn't happen again? That's what I should have said. That's, you know, 11 years later, Anastasia saying that. But at 25, I was like, I did do it. And I had said to you that this was how it's going to go. Uh, hmm, that girl. Anyway, roll it back. So to go back to Tina, and actually what I shared there is an example of the advice that I gave her. So to go back to Tina, there's two things that you can do when you disagree with a colleague. And this is what I shared with Tina too. So this is the part where the point of the episode actually starts. This whole, I don't know how long I've been talking, 5 minutes. This is where it actually starts. Um, so what I shared with Tina, I said, the first thing is the first step is to assume positive intent. That's my tip number one in this scenario. What does that mean? That means you assume that that person also wants the same thing that you want, same good outcome. They're not trying to ruin you, right? It's so easy when you're a kid, you watch all these videos and you're kind of told, like, when you watch these, not videos, these movies, here's a good guy, here's the bad guy. The bad guy knows he's a bad guy or she's a bad guy, right? Think of trying to think of, like, all of the freaking Disney movies that you watch, right? Knows he's the bad guy and he enjoys being the bad guy. Literally enjoys watching you suffer. Like, that's why he's a bad guy. And so I think, even though as an adult you know better, it's very easy to kind of just assume, like, oh, well, they're just a bad person and that's why they're that way. But that's not true. What I've learned, and what I'm assuming most of us know, but it's a good reminder to know, is that no one thinks they're the villain of the story. Almost everyone, I would say, probably think that they're the hero of the story. Think of the worst human being on the planet that you can think of in this moment. And I think we may have some shared commonality in who that person might be. That person thinks they're the good guy. And so assuming positive intent kind of forces you to take a step back, remove yourself from your own position and your own, like, perception, and put yourself in the shoes of the person that you disagree with and try to understand their perspective. When you do that, seek to understand. By assuming positive intent, it's easier for you to seek to understand. When you do that and you understand their perspective, it makes it easier for you to get to my next tip. So, when I'm talking to Tina, I said, think about Roxanne, right? I hear you that you just think she just doesn't like you and, just wants to get on your back. But put yourself in her position. How is Roxanne feeling? She suggested an idea, you suggested something different, you're essentially undermining her. How does that make her feel? How do you think that makes her feel in terms of her authority and her ability to execute on her end when she feels like you continue to undermine her, right? Or you continue to make her feel like her ideas are not valid. And so, it forced Tina to start thinking about, okay, well, I need her to understand, right? Like, it's not that I'm undermining her, it's that this is the best, like, the more, this is what we do, this is what we need to do. And I said, okay, but how can, so now we're in the part two of the tip, right? Like she said, how can I get her to understand? So typically when you're in conflict, you know people tend to take positions. By the way, shout out. This is based off of a book called Getting to Yes by Fisher and Uri. You should read that book if you haven't yet. It's a great book. Um, and so, you know, and if you hear me typing, it's because my computer screensavered. Anyway, and so people take a position. Like I'm gonna say I'm right because of this and you're wrong. And then the other person says, no, I'm right because of XYZ reason and you're wrong. So that's what, Tina could say that. I'm right, Roxanne's wrong. Roxanne says, no, I'm right, Tina's wrong, right? And so it's positional bargaining. You then each person takes a position and then you defend that position. And so she defends her position, you defend your position, and just keeps going and going and going and going. And you never actually get to a resolution, right? The only way that you get to a resolution is if the other person bends, one of you bends and says, no, you know what, you're right. Or the other person just gives up. Or you both agree to some middle ground compromise, or you give up a little bit just so that way you can, move forward. Either way, it's a lose lose situation in the compromise scenario, or it's a win lose situation, right? But actually, what you should get to is principled negotiation. So instead of taking a position where one person's right and the other person's wrong, instead, think about the problem that you're trying to solve for. And that's the other side that you're, trying to tackle. And then you partner with the person, and together you're working on solving the problem. Now, part of that might be stating the requirements, right? Like, what do you need to have for this to be true in order to solve the problem in the way that you think it should be solved? In this case, Tina, right? Like her solution, like what needs to be true for that? And then what does Roxanne need in order for it to be true for her? And so you can list those as requirements. And now all of a sudden, you have this board that you're looking at and you're working together to solve it. Here's the problem. This is what Tina needs. This is what Roxanne needs in order to solve the problem. What's the best solution to solve the problem? So it's not about Tina being right or Roxanne being right. It's about how can we work together to get to solve this problem and have both of our needs met. And when you look at that, then you're working together. The solution that you propose, both of you are bought into it, and hopefully that starts to heal and repair the relationship, right? To go back to my real life example of what I went through when I was 25, this client had said, hey, I want to do it like this. And I said, okay, but it's not going to work like that. So, I'll do it because you told me to do it, but it's not going to work. And I tried to convince them really hard that it wasn't going to work. I literally explained, and they just didn't want to listen because I was 25 and they are in their 50s and they are like experts in their field or whatever. So I was like, okay, if that's what you say, I've done I've done everything I can. At this point, my boss was also telling me stop. I was like, okay, so I did. And then it happened and it went the way that I thought it would. And again, in that scenario, I was like, they had gotten mad at me and said, you probably didn't do something. That's why this didn't work. And I said, no, I did. Like, we talked about it. I mitigated it as best as I can, but I explained to you that this is the outcome if we don't do this thing that I had said. And the other person got mad, right? Because I was essentially saying I was right and you are wrong. Now, I said what I should have done. This version of Anastasia, what I should have said was, okay, so this didn't work out the way that you expected it to. I understand. These are the things that we did, these are the things that you had proposed. How can we take a look at this again and solve for it together so that way it doesn't happen again, right? Notice in this situation, I already know the solution. And we ended up doing the solution that I proposed. But that's not the point. The point is the approach. The point is I showed empathy. I acknowledged that, they put in the work, as did I, and that it didn't work. And now I focused on, okay, so what can we do together to make sure that this doesn't happen again? And now we're partners in solving this, right? And if I had done that, then they would have been like, great, we're partners. And the relationship was fine. They apologized to me later because they knew that I was right. Um, but the approach that I had could have made that whole thing much smoother. That actually happened while I was on the one weekend that I decided to like take a PTO day and go to Paris. So That was a fun Paris weekend. It really was still though. But anyway, but that was a learn, and that was something that I learned, and because of it, um I'm a much better person now, much better person, executive, what may have you, right? And also my first master's degree. That's where I read the book Getting to Yes, and it gave me all these strategies. This is all to say, that's my recommendation. So again, to distill it, step one, assume positive intent, enable yourself to seek for understanding. Step two, um, don't take a position, focus on the problem, and then get that, understand your requirements, understand the other person's requirements for the solution, and then come up with a solution that works best. So that's the second thing. That's step two. And I'm a Christian, so I just also want to say, as a Christian, something that's really helped me is reminding myself that, God has given me so much grace. I'm meant to extend that grace to others. Jesus was asked, how often should I forgive God? Like seven times. And Jesus says, no, 70 times seven, meaning always forgive an incalculable amount, because that's what it takes to, that's what, as long as that person is really repentant and wanting forgiveness, and forgive, because, you're meant to love God and love each other. That's what the 10 Commandments boils down to. So, um, that also helps me a lot, like as a Christian, to have that perspective. So yeah, so that's the share here. I think I'm coming up on, oh gosh, hopefully, how many minutes now? Okay, yep, coming up on quite a few minutes. So to wrap up, I always want to end these with some random advice, and my random advice for today is to start your day with gratitude. So this is a gratitude journal. I try to write in it a few minutes a day. Start my day with, like, what are you grateful for? I'm just going to show you the inside of it. I don't know if you can see that, but essentially it's like, what are you today I'm grateful for? How will I make today awesome? What are some positive affirmations? There's a little quote. And then at the end of the day, it's like, what made my day today? What did I learn? What are my goals for tomorrow? And then, like, you're meant to, if you can see, but like, you're meant to share like your feelings, at the end of the day. Inventory. So I love it because it sets my day up um really well. And this morning I was listening to lo-fi girl, Hollywood, not Hollywood, sorry, hip hop, neo soul. And it was so great just to get me in the right vibe as I'm looking at all these spreadsheets and, getting my day together. It's just a really good way to reflect. And I do this. And yeah, it just set my day, it just set my day up in the right way. So I'm always looking for things that I'm grateful for. So, yeah, highly recommend. And until the next one, I hope y'all have a fantastic evening. Thank you. Bye.